Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back. Welcome back to another English teaching program. My name is Cloverdale, and my job is to teach you English, and I will do my best. I will do my best. Okay. There are more people in Spain than in Syria, for example. What's the capital of Spain? The capital of Spain is Madrid. What's the capital of Syria? Do you know? Come on. The capital of Syria is Damascus. Okay. Damascus is an older city than Madrid. So the capital of Syria is older than the capital of Spain. Damascus is an older city than Madrid. Madrid isn't as old as Damascus. Okay. Yeah. This book is big, but it isn't as big as the Quixote. The Quixote is bigger than this book. Okay. Now, Spain and Syria. There are more people in Spain than in Syria. The population of Spain is around 44 or 45 million, and the population of Syria is, I think, around 28 million. The capital of Syria. The population of Syria. Now, there are more people in Spain than in Syria. That's a comparative. More than. There are more people in Spain than in Syria. Now, we can say the same comparative in a different way. If there are more people in Spain than in Syria, that means there aren't as many people in Syria as in Spain. You can also say there are fewer people in Syria than in Spain. So there are three ways to make a simple comparison between Syria and Spain regarding people. There are more people in Spain than in Syria. There are fewer people in Syria than in Spain, or there aren't as many people in Syria as in Spain. Okay. Now, let's look at another question. Let's look at olive oil and olive trees. Aceite de oliva y olivos, los árboles. Okay? Now, Spain, Syria. There are more olive trees in Spain than in Syria. It's very easy. There are more olive trees in Spain than in Syria. Okay? There are fewer olive trees in Syria than in Spain. Or, third possibility, there aren't as many olive trees in Syria as in Spain. Okay? It's clear. The same as people. No change. Now, olive oil, aceite de oliva, olive oil. Listen, there is, or contracción, there's more olive oil in Spain than in Syria. Second possibility, there's less olive oil in Syria than in Spain. Okay? Or there isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain. Okay. Now, olive oil, olive trees. There's a difference here. In the affirmative, it's the same. There are more olive trees in Spain than in Syria. There is more olive oil. Okay, we change from there are to there is. From plural to singular. From countable, but you can count olive trees. 1, 2, 3, 4. To olive oil, uncountable. You can't count olive oil. You don't say, ¿cuántos aceites de oliva? You can say, how many bottles of olive oil? Yes. So we change from there is to there are to there is. There are more olive trees in Spain than in Syria. There is more olive oil in Spain than in Syria. Okay, it's clear. There is. It's very simple. The other part, the second part of the equation, same equation. There are fewer. Let's start with olive oil first. Aceite. There is less olive oil in Syria than in Spain. Less than. There is less olive oil in Syria, than in Spain. Now, there isn't as much olive oil. There isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain. Now, olive trees. There are fewer. Aquí no digo less. Para los plurales, fewer, menos. Olivos. There are fewer olive trees in Syria than in Spain. There are fewer olive trees. Okay? There is less olive oil para los singulares o no contables. Less. Para los contables plurales, fewer. Okay? You understand? There are fewer olive trees in Syria than in Spain. There is less olive oil in Syria than in Spain. Or, primero aceite. There isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain. There isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain. There is less olive oil in Syria than in Spain. There aren't as many olive trees. There isn't as much oil. There aren't as many trees. There isn't as much oil. There aren't as many trees in Syria as in Spain. Okay? Now, if you listen to English-speaking people, often you can catch them with a mistake. People, native English speakers like me, often we make a mistake and we say less people. There were less people at the party than I expected. It's a mistake. There were fewer people at the party than I expected. I expected 100 people at the party, and there were only 47. So, there were fewer people at the party than I expected. There weren't as many people at the party than I expected. It's interesting about English. I've been speaking of 3 different possibilities of the comparison. For example, no hay tanta agua no hay tanto aceite de oliva en Syria como en España. There isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain, or there's less olive oil in Syria than in Spain. When we're starting from the less angle, cuando empezamos desde el ángulo de menos que, normally in English we say not as much as. It's more common, for example, to say there aren't as many people in Spain as in France. It's more common than to say there are fewer people in Spain than in France. Both are perfectly correct. And you can say, in Spain there are 45 million people. In France there are 68 million people. So, there are fewer people in Spain than in France. That's perfect English. But it's more common, strangely, even though the sentence is longer and perhaps grammatically more complicated for you, but for us, natives, we normally say, there aren't as many people in Spain as in France. There isn't as much sunlight in France as in Spain. There aren't as many flamenco dancers in France as in Spain. There isn't as much olive oil in France as in Spain. But there isn't as much wine in Spain as in France. We usually say it in the negative with as much as and as many as. Okay, well, let's make a comparison for the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes, however much time we have left. Let's make comparisons between Spain and Syria. People. Okay? There aren't as many people in Syria as in Spain. There aren't as many people. There are fewer people. There aren't as many people in Syria as in Spain. Sunlight. There isn't as much sunlight in Spain as in Syria. Of course, in Spain there's a lot of sunlight, luz solar. There's a lot of sunlight in Spain. But there's even more in Syria, because half of Syria is semi-desertic. So there's a lot of sunlight. So there isn't as much sunlight in Spain as in Syria. Factories, fábricas, there aren't as many factories in Syria as in Spain. Fijaos aquí. Siempre as. Okay? Igual en el ejemplo muy sencillo. I am not as tall as Michael Jordan. I'm not as tall as Michael Jordan. I don't have as much money as Michael Jordan. I don't have as many cars as Michael Jordan. In the 3 comparatives, we use as. As much as many as. I'm not as tall as Michael Jordan. I don't have as much money as Michael Jordan. And I don't have as many cars as Michael Jordan. He has more cars than, with more than, not as. He has more cars than I do. I have fewer cars than he does. I don't have as many cars as he does. Okay, Spain and Syria again. Okay, factories. There aren't as many factories in Syria as in Spain. Spain has more. Spain is not necessarily a highly industrial country, but there's an important industrial base in Spain. And in Syria, less. So there aren't as many factories in Syria as in Spain. Okay? Sand. There isn't as much sand in Spain as in Syria. In Spain, there's a lot of sand. Arena, sand. Because Spain has a long coast, and there's a lot of sand on the beaches, and certain areas of Spain, especially in Almeria, has desert. So there's a lot of sand. But Syria, half of the country is a desert. So there's a lot of sand in Syria. So there isn't as much sand in Spain as in Syria. Camels, clearly. There are a few camels in Spain, but mainly in the zoo and in the Canary Islands. On Lanzarote, maybe there's some camels. But there aren't as many camels in Spain as in Syria. There are more camels in Syria. There are fewer camels in Spain than in Syria. So there aren't as many camels in Spain as in Syria. Oil. Petroleum oil that you extract from the ground. Black crude oil. Well, there isn't as much oil in Spain as in Syria. Syria doesn't have much oil. Syria is not one of the big Arab producers of oil. However, there is some oil in Syria, especially in the south. And so there's more oil in Syria than in Spain. Because in Spain, there's practically no crude oil at all. Okay? So there isn't as much oil in Spain as in Syria. Or, using the more official word, there isn't as much petroleum in Spain as in Syria. Flamenco dancers. Okay, well, I don't think there are any flamenco dancers in Syria, as far as I know. Probably there's one or two. Okay, but there are a lot of flamenco dancers in Spain, so there aren't as many flamenco dancers in Syria as in Spain. There aren't as many in Syria as in Spain. Okay. Olive trees. Well, as I said before, there aren't as many olive trees in Syria as in Spain. There are a lot of olive trees in Syria because in the Middle East, especially the Mediterranean stretch, el tramo de Oriente Medio, que linda con el Mediterráneo, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, Jordan, these areas, olive trees are very important, and there's a lot of olive oil production. But Spain is #1 in the world. There are more olive trees only in the province of Jaén in Spain than all of the Middle East together. Okay? So there aren't as many olive trees in Spain, in Syria, excuse me. There aren't as many. There aren't as many. There aren't. Aren't. Es una sola sílaba. Yo no estoy diciendo there aren't. Okay? There aren't. Aren't. There aren't as many olive trees in Syria as in Spain. Olive oil. Well, again, there isn't as much olive oil in Syria as in Spain. There isn't as much. Rain. That's an interesting question. But I think there isn't as much rain in Syria as in Spain. Spain is a relatively dry country. Certain areas of Spain are not dry. The north of Spain, along the Atlantic coast, Galicia to the Basque country, is relatively wet, a wet area. But in general, Spain is not famous for its rain. But I think there's a bit more rain in Spain than in Syria. So there isn't as much rain in Syria as in Spain. Belly dancers. Bailadores del vientre, the belly dancing. Well, there aren't as many belly dancers in Spain as in Syria. Bedouins. Do you know what the Bedouins are? Bedouins are nomadic Arabs who move a lot from one place to another with their sheep and their goats. Sheep, las ovejas y las cabras. And they move with their tents, their camels or horses, and their sheep and their goats. And they move from one place to another. Bedouins. Okay? So, Syria and Spain, Bedouins. Well, clearly, there aren't as many Bedouins in Spain, as in Syria. All right. Comparing things. For example, if I say to you, there isn't as much flour in my house as in yours. There aren't as many flowers in my house as in yours. Did you notice the difference? Let me repeat it. There aren't as many flowers in my house as in yours. I think it's clear. This time, yes, it's clear. There aren't as many flowers in my house as in yours, which means that you or your wife or your family love flowers or like flowers more than my family, and you keep more flowers in your house. So there are more flowers in your house than in mine. Okay? Which means there aren't as many flowers in my house as, recordad, as aquí, cuando es as much as or as many as. There aren't as many flowers in my house as in yours. Now the second question here. There is more flour in your house than in mine, which means there is less flour in my house than in yours, which means there isn't as much flour in my house as in yours. Do you understand the second question? Okay. The important thing here is to understand is there are two words. One is flores in plural. I have one flower, a rose, for example. I have two flowers. Okay? Now, I have flour. Do you understand that? I have a flower. Digamos que es una flor. I have a flower in my hand. Now, I have flour in my hand. Can I do this? If I say I have flour in my hand, I can't do this. I have to do this. Because flour is harina. Se escribe flor, pero se pronuncia igual que flor. Una flor. Pero siempre en singular, por supuesto, porque es incontable, flour. So I have flour in my hand. And so in my house, there is some flour. And there are some flowers. In your house, perhaps there isn't any flour, and there aren't any flowers. There's a very big difference between these two. Now, no hay tanta harina en mi casa como la tuya. There isn't as much flour in my house as in yours. Ahora, no hay tantas flores en mi casa como la tuya. There aren't as many flowers in my house as in yours. So now you remember today the word harina y flor sound the same. Hay una flor en la harina. ¿Quién puso una flor en la harina? Who put a flower in the flour? It sounds exactly the same. In America, in England, in Scotland, in Australia, in New Zealand, everywhere. Who put a flower in the flour? Okay. There isn't as much. There aren't as many. I have more free time than you. You don't have as much free time as I do. I have more hours in the day, more free hours than you. You don't have as many free hours as I do. I have more money than you. You don't have as much money as I do. I have more euros in my pocket than you do. You don't have as many euros as I do. Okay? I have more opportunities than you to speak English. You don't have as many opportunities as I do. Okay? I'm not as tall as Michael Jordan. I don't have as much money as Michael Jordan. I don't have as many cars as Michael Jordan. When we speak in the sense of menos que, less than, or fewer than, it's very common. Probably 70 or 80 or 90% of the time, we don't say less than or fewer than. We say not as much as and not as many as. I don't have as much money as the Rockefeller family, and I don't have as many cars as the Rockefeller family. Okay. Do you speak as much English as I do? Probably not, which means you need to continue studying. So, I'll see you again very soon. All right, and study, don't forget. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome again. Welcome again. Today I'm going to do the simple past. This is a class for intermediate people. If you consider yourself an advanced student, I recommend that you stay here and continue watching, because I challenge you to get the simple past correct every time. Okay, number one. Did Juan Carlos become the king in 1963? No, he didn't. He didn't become the king in 1963. Did Juan Carlos become the king in 1984? No, he didn't. When did he become the king of Spain? When did he become the king of Spain? He became the king of Spain in 1975, 3 days after the death of General Franco. Okay, and how many children did he have when he became the king of Spain? He had 3 children when he became the king of Spain. Are his children grown now? Yes, they are. His children are grown now. Are all of them married, or only 2 or 3 of them married? No, all of them are married. Okay? So when Juan Carlos became the king, he had 3 children and none of them were married. Now, all of them are married. Okay, well, when did Juan Carlos become the king? He became the king of Spain. He became the king of Spain in 1975. Is he still the king today? Yes, he is. So, how long has he been the king? He has been the king for, what, 32 years? If he became the king in 1975, and we're in 2007 now, okay, 75, 85, 95, 2005. So he has been, contracción, he's been the king of Spain for 32 years. Okay. Second question. Did the Roman Empire fall 100 years or 400 years after Christ? Well, the Roman Empire became an empire about 30 years before Christ. If we considered that Jesus of Nazareth was born in the year 0, which is really not true, because the historians say that he was born 4 years before Christ, historically. But let's assume he was born in the year 0. Well, the Roman Republic officially became the Roman Empire in 28 BC, 28 years before Christ. So, how long had the Roman Empire been in existence when Jesus Christ was born? Well, for 28 years. Now, did the Roman Empire fall before or after the death of Jesus Christ? Well, it fell after. Did it fall 100 years after? No, it didn't. It didn't fall 100 years after Christ. When did the Roman Empire fall? Well, the Roman Empire fell. The Roman Empire fell. LL al final, no T. No confundamos con el verbo sentir. It fell 400 years after Christ, okay? And did you fall in love last year? You didn't. Ask me if I fell in love last year. Question, did you fall in love last year? No, I didn't. I didn't fall in love with it last year. I fell in love many years ago, okay? When did you get married? I got married in 1977. So, are you still married? Yes, I am. Are you still married to the same person? Yes, I am. So, if you got married in 1977, and you're still married now, in 2007, that means you've been married for 30 years. Well, it's not true. I haven't been married for 30 years. I've been married for 29 and a half years. And why is that? Because I got married at the end of 1977, the next to last day. I got married on December the 30th. 1977, and now we're in the middle of 2007, right now, recording this program. So, I have been married for 29 and a half years. By the end of this year, I will have been married for 30 years. That's the future perfect, like my wife. My wife is the past perfect, the present perfect, and the future perfect. Okay? Perfection, elevated to the 10th power. So, I've been married for 29 and a half years, and by the end of this year, I will have been married for 30 years. Okay, next question. Did the miners find gold or silver in California in the 19th century? Do you understand? Do you want me to repeat? Did the miners find gold or silver in California in the 19th century? The miners. Miners wear a hat with a light on their hat, and they go down into the mines and they look for gold. Sometimes you can find gold in the rivers and the streams. A river is like the Tajo. A stream is a small river. Normally the water is clear and the water is moving fast and it's very cold. That's a stream. And you go with a pan, like a frying pan, you know, to fry eggs on a frying pan. But we use a pan that is a sieve, and the water goes through and only the gold remains. That's to pan for gold. So there are two types, there are two basic ways to look for gold.